Hello and welcome to Sideline Story, your destination for sports news, analysis and discussions. I'm Yang Guang. This week we discuss, is the NBA losing interest among Chinese fans, and how social media is becoming a game changer in top sports events. For this conversation, I'm joined here with my fantastic co-hosts Tian Yu and Brandon Yates. Alright, the NBA season wrapped up this week with Oklahoma City Thunder winning the NBA championship in 7 games.
Yeah.
And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was voted MVP. However, the stats of the NBA viewership in the finals don't look that good. Stats show that Game 1 attracted less than 8.7 million viewers in the United States, the lowest in 18 years, excluding the COVID years. Game 7 this year saw the peak with over 16 million viewers, but by comparison, Game 7 of the 2016 NBA Finals between the Warriors and the Cavaliers had over 31 million people watching. Here in China, which we will mainly focus today, even though the official data of the NBA Finals viewership isn't released, there's far less buzz on the internet about the NBA Finals this year in China.
Yeah.
So Tian, do you think the NBA's popularity is on a decline in China? And if yes, do you think it's just a sustained trend or just a blip?
Well, yeah, I think what you said, and I would say from what we've seen, the NBA is going through, a dip in the attention, because especially compared to its peak years. And this isn't just a China thing or a US thing. I would say feel like a broader global trend. I think the reasons are varied, because first of all, let's talk about the quality of the game. I mean, there's been a clear drop in how exciting and competitive the games feel. I mean, we're just seeing way too many fouls being called. And even with the coach's challenge system now in place, officiating still feels very inconsistent or frustrating to watch. And it's hard to get into the game that stops every other minute just for a review or a soft foul. And then I would say there's the play style. It might sound like a cliche, but I would say the game just isn't as beautiful as it once was. There's too much reliance on the 3-ball and the less mid-range creativity and simply not enough gritty, hard-nosed defense. We could see guys like SGA could get his 30 points almost effortlessly in every game, and which sounds great on paper, but when scoring feels, just too easy and defenses aren't really making it work, the games are losing its tension and its thrill. And then there's less suspense, less fight, and that makes the experience less dramatic or memorable for the fans. So it's like watching a Superman movie where the villains died too early in the film. And also another big reason I would say come from a lack of genuine superstar rivalries. Because back in the day, you could see Kobe Bryant going toe-to-toe with Iverson, with Michael Jordan, or LeBron James clashing with Steph Curry in the finals year after year. But now that kind of personal high-stakes drama just faded away, because with load management, shorter attention spans, and players switching teams so frequently, it's harder to build those long-term narratives. Adding the fact that regular season games just don't feel like they matter anymore. I mean, players can sit out, they don't treat each game carefully, and the fans know that the real action doesn't start until April really starts. So that all contributes to viewer fatigue. And lastly, I would say the way people watch game has changed. I mean, fewer fans are tuning on traditional TV, especially younger fans, because everyone's on TikTok watching highlights, scrolling through the clips. Personally speaking, I really watch a full game live, but instead, I only start watching the game when the fourth quarter really starts. We know the fourth quarter is where the real action begins, and I think many fans now have the same habit as me. So yeah, I think this drop in tension isn't just a blip. I would say it's a reflection of some deeper structural issues in how the NBA is packaged and played now. Of course, it's not all doom and gloom. I mean, the league is still widely popular and there are breakout stars who have the potential to reignite interest. But to reverse this trend, I think the league might need to rethink how it balances entertainment with competitiveness and the narratives.
Right. I remember in the past few seasons after the NBA finals, there would be a lot of posts in my WeChat, on
Yeah.
Weibo and Chinese TikTok. Many of my friends would talk with me, either online or in person about the games, the stars. One of my friends even had a fierce debate with me about whether LeBron James' NBA title in the bubble during COVID counts. Maybe we can make another episode about
Yeah.
that. But anyway, this year it seems like this kind of chat between me and my friends disappeared suddenly. Some of my friends, they said they even didn't watch the NBA finals at all this year. So, Brandon, is this the similar case around you? And how about, the NBA's global influence? Do you think it's declining?
I think there definitely seems to be, a fairly notable decline in terms of season viewership and finals viewership in the last couple of years. I think Tian, you mentioned a couple of good reasons there. I think, the declining physicality of the game and, the way that matches are officiated and the kind of cotton wool approach of, some of the fouls and that sort of thing with the game becoming less physical and sometimes less entertaining to watch, I think, and certain players kind of using the rules to their advantage, which you can't really blame the players for, but maybe for the neutral fans it can be a little bit boring. So I mean, the amount of kind of in-season games that take place that are kind of mediocre and teams seemingly just kind of preparing to get to the latter stages of the season and kind of holding everything back for conference finals and of course the NBA finals themselves. And I think there's a couple of other factors as well. The declining star power influence of players that have kind of dominated the league for, decades. You think of Steph Curry, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, all of these players that are, kind of falling away before we get to the kind of latter stages of the season. But again, even when they are playing in, events like the All-Star games, even those I think are kind of reaching declining viewership and interest from fans and the players in that event is also declining. So I think it is quite concerning for the NBA as a whole, and it's something that definitely needs to be looked at. But that kind of trend is kind of it seems to be happening in the US and in China as well. Yang Guang, like you mentioned, I think there definitely is the sense in China that storytelling around the NBA this season and in kind of the past few seasons has been a little bit muted.
Mm.
No significant domestic media buzz, since kind of the resumption of televising of the game since 2022. Of course, there was the spike with, the Macau preseason exhibitions, but, I think overall interest in the NBA since 2019, I think in China has kind of declined a little bit in terms of traditional viewership. But I mean, like you guys have also mentioned, it's not all doom and gloom. If you look at global statistics, as far as I know, league pass viewership spiked, obviously with Game 7 delivering a 42% increase internationally over last year. So I think that's a promising sign. And I think overall viewership globally is kind of, I wouldn't say it's on a massive decline, but it's stagnated a little bit. But I think, the spike in the US and globally in Game 7 was to be expected. I think there would always be a spike in a Game 7 viewership, no matter which teams are playing. But compared to other Game 7 viewership numbers, it still wasn't, anything remarkable. But I mean, there's a couple of examples. I mean, I was in the airport recently, and so many. I remember I was sitting next to a guy, where the NBA finals were like on the screen above us, but he was on his phone watching, kind of quarter by quarter highlights on
Yeah.
on TikTok.
Yeah.
And I don't know why it's the case. I don't know if it's because the matches are becoming a little bit tedious, like a little bit boring, or if there's too many matches, or if they go on for too long, or just overall media consumption globally, not just for your regular standard TV program viewers, but even for sports fans, which I don't think a lot of sports organizations anticipated. I think even their attention span for full matches is declining.
Yeah.
But I would have expected that for, kind of mid-season games, but I wouldn't have expected that for like an NBA finals. Then again, I don't think we see things like that for sports where there's one final. I don't think you see that for something like the Rugby World Cup final, the FIFA World Cup final, the Champions League final, where there's one match and high drama. Maybe the NBA needs to look at the amount of matches that are played in finals. I've always felt like 7 games for a sports final is so intense, and I can't think of many international sports outside of the US that have like 6 or 7 games to determine a final. We see it in baseball, we see it in hockey, we see it in basketball, and I think that's pretty unique to the US. Whereas, in the world's most popular sport, football, there's one final, and that's the result, and it determines a whole season, which some teams might view as unfair. But for fans, I think it's always highly entertaining, whether you're a fan of the teams in the final or not, or whether you're just a casual viewer of the sport. I think when it's one final, it seems to really draw in viewership to that particular final. So maybe it's just the amount of games being played in season and in the finals, also the officiating and the way the kind of game is evolving away from physicality to a more technical, skill-based sort of way of playing. So I think there's a couple of factors that the NBA needs to look at, but I think they should be concerned about the decline in traditional TV viewership. But I think, again, they will probably be also very excited about the huge spike in social media interest in the league.
Right. I remember game 1 of the NBA Finals this year was quite classic. Tyrese Halliburton almost made a buzzer beater to win the game for Indiana. But
That was awesome, yeah.
surprisingly, after that game 2's viewership even dropped after such a dramatic game 1. That's something I just don't get.
Yeah.
Maybe they play too many
Young one,
matches.
do you think it's maybe because older generations and even younger generations, maybe they haven't connected with these stars yet? I think, some of these names that we've mentioned, Tyrese Halliburton, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Chet Holmgren, they are fantastic players, but they're not like these established NBA global superstars yet, like Shaq or Kobe or LeBron or, Kevin Durant or any of these sorts of players. They might get there, but maybe it's too soon for them to draw in that kind of global viewership, and they're not these international megastars yet. And on top of that, they're also playing for teams that are not traditionally known to attract international audiences. They're not the Lakers, they're not the Celtics, they're not the Golden State Warriors. So I think for the NBA, like these two teams and these players getting to the finals, they probably would have preferred like a 40-year-old LeBron to get to the final, right?
Yeah, I agree. There definitely is a gap in star quality and game
stardom.
quality as well.
Yeah.
I mean, Indiana and OKC, they played 7 brilliant games, but they just lacked a star lineup that most NBA fans anticipate to see with the likes of, Curry, LeBron, Jokic, etc. And I just think I have this feeling that the games are sometimes swayed by the league. I have this feeling, especially, for example, in Game 4 in Indiana, I definitely felt some game swing calls from the referees. It's like the league wanted to make a 2-all tie instead of a 3-1 lead by Indiana.
Tricky.
Yeah, I have this feeling. And as Tianyu mentioned, the time span of each game is just getting longer and longer with so many commercials between the plays. I was watching Game 6 while my wife asked me to drive her to the supermarket, and she asked when the game would end. I said, there's 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And she said, don't fool me. I know the tricks. I know the NBA. 3 minutes literally means half an hour. I mean, the woman's got the point.
You know all the tricks.
Yeah. All right. Before we move on, here's a recap of the biggest sports stories of the past week. Chinese basketball player Yang Hansen became the 16th overall pick in the 2025 NBA draft, and he's headed to the Portland Trail Blazers, who traded down with Memphis Grizzlies. Yang had been projected to be selected around the 30th pick.
开拓者的球探之前的时候。
The Blazers had scouts scouting me in China the last couple of years. I also had a pre-workout with them last month. Everything went very well, and I got along with all the front office people. But at the end of the day, this is sort of beyond my wildest imagination.
Turning 20 on the draft day, the center played for the Qingdao Eagles in the CBA last season. The Dallas Mavericks selected Duke phenom Cooper Flag with the number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft. The announcement ended a months-long build-up for the 18-year-old, who had been long projected as the top selection.
100%. I mean, I'm really excited. I think I keep saying I'm excited to be a sponge, to get down there and just learn, be surrounded by, Hall of Fame caliber guys, and just to be able to learn from them. It's going to be an incredible experience. I feel so blessed, to be in the position I am, and I'm going to try and grow my game as much as I can.
The Mavericks earned that opportunity when they won the NBA draft lottery last month, despite having just 1.8% odds of moving into the top spot. Atletico Madrid became the first European powerhouse to bow out of the Club World Cup in the US. They beat Botafogo 1-0 in the final Group B game, but it was not enough to make up for their 4-0 loss to PSG in the opener. The Spanish Giants were eliminated on goal difference, while Botafogo advanced into the last 16. Kirsty Coventry has assumed the presidency of the International Olympic Committee. She becomes the first woman and first African to lead IOC.
As the Olympic movement, as federations, as NOCs, as our sponsors and our partners, we are the guardians of this incredible platform. And it's not just about a multi-sport event. It's a platform to inspire. It's a platform to change lives. And it's a platform to bring hope. These are not things taken lightly. And I'm looking forward to working with each and every one of you to make sure that we continue to inspire, continue to change lives, continue to be a beacon of hope.
The owner of 7 Olympic medals from swimming, 41-year-old Coventry won gold in the 200-meter backstroke at Athens 2004 and then again in Beijing 4 years later. The Houston Rockets acquired 15-time All-Star Kevin Durant from the Phoenix Suns in a blockbuster deal. The Rockets gave up Dylan Brooks, Jalen Green, and 6 picks. It ends weeks of speculation about the future of Durant, with many teams linked at various times, including Miami and Minnesota. All right, welcome back. Another factor that is impacting the NBA viewership these days should be, as you guys just mentioned, how people are watching the games right now. Many people, especially young basketball fans here in China, from my observation, would turn to social media to watch the NBA. To them, 2 hours of a full game is just too long.
Definitely.
A bunch of 1-minute highlighting clips is just right. This is a very common phenomenon here in China. Many Gen Z young fans like you would just watch fourth quarter of a game or even just highlights after the game. Plus, there are tons of other entertainment options for them: social media, videos, video games, live streaming by influencers online. By comparison, the NBA, a full NBA game, cannot guarantee, consistent joy that alternatives can offer. A full NBA game might be too long, too boring for them. So, Tianyu, do you think social media is reshaping NBA engagement and undermining the NBA's influence, especially in China?
Well, definitely. I think social media has completely changed how people now engage with the NBA. Like you said, with this, with platforms like TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, they're just as important, if not more, than traditional TV when it comes to how fans are experience the game. I mean, we've seen a steady decline in TV ratings, but at the same time, millions are watching highlight reels, player reactions, post-game analysis, and even what we are doing, podcast episodes, featuring both current and former basketball NBA players. I mean, take the example of Joe Morant. When he put off 2 insane spinning layup back in November 2024, the clips of him doing the moves racked up over 160 million views in just 24 hours.
Right.
And that's the kind of viral moment that captures the attention way beyond the final score of the game. And this trend, I think, isn't just in basketball, but also in football too. The Premier League's digital presence is also exploding for similar reasons. Now, is this shift good or bad? I think it depends on how you look at it. I mean, on the one hand, we might be moving towards a model where, iconic moments like a poster dunk, a buzzer beater, or even a courtside reaction generates more attention and cultural relevance than the actual outcome of the actual game. And for some people, that's a bad sign because, fans are watching clips more instead of full games, and that could weaken long-term viewership. On the flip side, I think it's about accessibility and engagement.
Yeah.
Not everyone has 2.5 hours to sit down and just, watch a game. But for now, fans can catch the best moments instantly, join the conversation online, and stay connected to the culture. And I think that creates a kind of shared experience that's more global and also more dynamic.
I just think it's kind of unfair for the players. And they play hard for 48 minutes, but the audience only just watch 1 minute clip. It's
that's
kind
how
of
the social
unfair
media
for them.
work. Yeah.
I remember back in my high school, TV was the only access to watching the NBA games. We were so excited to watch the games from the TV, and I wouldn't miss a second of it, even the commercials. And we even bought NBA magazines, and read every article on it and shared with my classmates. But now that era is long gone, and everyone is turning to social media for fast food content, and the NBA is now part of it. So, Brandon, do you think it's a bad sign for the NBA and other top sports events like football? Because football games also have such, embarrassment, I would call. Not everyone is willing to watch 90 minutes of football.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a problem. I think it depends on your perspective. I think if you look at some of the stats, and if look, I think it's a problem for traditionalists like us, maybe. Like the kind of older generation that, really get hyped up to watch an entire game and are really true fans of the sport and want to watch every minute of it and, take in the atmosphere and really embrace, these true showings of athleticism and, teams going all the way to try and lift a title. But again, I don't think that's an issue for sports where there's one final. I think holding the attention of Gen Z viewers for 7 games that sometimes last 2 hours each, I think that's a big, big ask for any sport or any entertainment model to hold any Gen Z or just any viewer these days that's engaged in social media predominantly to hold attention for that long is almost impossible. I think, and social media companies like TikTok, Instagram, they've all realized this. They've realized that you really need to capture somebody's attention as quickly as possible. And if you hold onto somebody's attention on a clip for more than 10 seconds, you've done a good job. The fact that, numbers for traditional viewership on TV are declining, I think that's a huge concern for television companies. And I think that's something that they have seen, for all sorts of things, like live TV shows, series, late night talk shows, all of that sort of thing. Those numbers have been steadily declining over the years. But again, social media engagement for those traditional sort of television platforms has been increasing, and it's no different for the NBA. So hopefully for the NBA, they definitely do need to address how they can potentially hold fans viewership for, entire matches. And I think that's something they're going to need to address. And I'm sure it is something they are going to be looking at very, very seriously. But just in it for this year in particular, I think the odds were kind of against the NBA. I mean, it was definitely, probably one of the smallest market finals of all time. I mean, the Thunder are 26th in the TV market and the Pacers are 22nd in the TV market, so it definitely had a limited reach compared to previous NBA finals. So I think, this matchup alone definitely likely suppressed the ratings, but it doesn't really account for all of the declining finals viewerships from like 2019, for example. But I think this year in particular, that was probably a reason why viewership decreased. But then if you look at the social media numbers, I think this is something that, marketing executives and that sort of thing, they'll go to the NBA and say, listen, the demand for this sport and the highlights and everything that's happening in the sport is not declining. This is something you need to look at because the finals generated 5 billion social media viewers and that was up 215% year on year. And playoff clips amassed 32 billion views. So, young fans are definitely looking towards snackable content.
I find this dilemma or a difficulty in sports social media videos is that, in the cases of, TV series, social media clips and videos can attract audience to go back to the TV series to watch the full program. But for sports, would, social media videos let people go back to the full game? I mean, watching sports is all about watching live.
Yeah.
Watching the game that is going on. Another question is, would social media videos allow people to watch full live games? I doubt it, because stats show that, yes, there are billions of views on social media videos, but the viewership of the full game live from TV is still declining. TV series promotional videos is not in the same logical sense with the sports social media videos. I have this big question mark for social media engagement with sports. I'm still a traditionalist with
Old
sports.
school.
Yeah, we must watch TV.
Full game watcher.
Young one, it's so tricky. Like, I think, like you mentioned, the live sport factor is so important, and you can't draw people to watch past games again. And I don't even think that's what TV executives want. They, like you mentioned, they want people to watch the live matches and they want them to watch the full game. But how can you use social media to draw people to those live sports games? It's hard because, the highlights only happen once the game's already happened, whereas like with
Exactly.
with a TV show, you can kind of, or a movie, you can kind of show highlights and that will draw people to watch the film or the TV series. But once the match has already happened and you've seen the highlights and there's a game happening in 2 or 3 days' time, people are not going to go back and watch that full match again. So I think traditional media in sport, I think, are going to have probably one of the hardest missions of all traditional media platforms to get people to watch full-length features. So I think if you are in the TV business for live sport and you're competing with social media to try and figure out a way to draw the same audiences to watch full-length live matches, I think a huge shift needs to be made.
Yeah. I mean, social media videos, they are just a slam dunk contest. But there's so much more you can find in a full game. That's why I insist you must watch the full game to get the charm of sports. With that, we end this episode of Sideline Story. Thank you so much for joining us. Subscribe to Sideline Story and leave your comments wherever you listen to podcasts. For more information, you can also check our website at radio.cgtn.com. Until next time, stay on the sidelines with us.